in the last Direct, you said about a possible business approach that Microsoft could take, which is to quote unquote license the Xbox for third-party companies to make their own version. If this happens, would Microsoft prove that the 3DO was right all along, John?
I mean, the 3DO concept was awesome. They were. I think Tripp was right about the idea. It's just that at that specific time, it wasn't monetarily viable necessarily. But then again, I guess the difference here is, so like, we're talking about making the Xbox more into a PC-like device, and that has different implications than a closed platform. The 3DO also had the issue that it was a closed platform, and that, the hardware makers, normally when you make hardware, you got to make their money back selling software, right? The whole blades and razors thing. And, Panasonic was licensing to do this 3DO manufacturing, Gold Star them. If they weren't making software, like, how did they make their money? They had to sell it for a high price, basically. And so I think today, though, we've seen like just the way hardware is sold and made and works, it's all pretty different now. And I mean, if you've got like Asus selling like the ROG Ally and all this types of hardware, they're also not really getting any licensing fees like a console traditionally would. And that's kind of the model we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Where it's more like the PC market. And I think also people are more willing to spend on these types of platforms now. Like when the 3DO launching for like $700 in the early 90s, that's a huge ask, especially for a non-established new platform. Whereas we're talking about a different thing here. I think
that only does one thing too. Like the 3DO did.
Oh, no. It did
multimedia, but
multimedia, video CDs, music CDs.
But like the ability to also take your Steam Deck, like you put it in and you put it out. Yeah. It's like a desktop PC at that point. That's huge. It's huge. So I think that's another thing. And also the stores at that point is another aspect that makes it kind of interesting. Why you'd maybe pay more for the hardware, because you realize you could get a greater deal on games because you have a variety of stores you can buy them from.
Well, I think he's just saying, though, the issue again is that the manufacturers if they were to like license this out and make a box, they wouldn't necessarily benefit from that. But that's already the case with PCs. So
yeah, I'm thinking back to a lot of the things that Phil said in that Polygon interview. Phil Spencer, that is. Basically, he's seeing an end to the traditional console model. The traditional console model is that they create a bespoke box which they take a hit on financially, and then they claw the money back via game sales and subscriptions and stuff like that. Phil is looking ahead. He's saying, well, this model, does it actually expand the audience? And he's saying no, because as all of the stats are now revealing, the size of the console market is not increasing gen on gen. So he's saying, well, is this model actually working for us anymore? Is there a different model we can look into? If you no longer are subsidizing the hardware, then you no longer need to create your own closed ecosystem with which to claw that money back. And I guess he's also looking, we talked about it last week, at the fact that, phone manufacturers, Apple specifically, but Google also, they're being forced to open their platforms. And it may well be the case that it becomes inevitable that consoles have to open those closed ecosystems to competitors as well. And so the 3DO model was kind of like not great because, it could be usurped by the traditional console model, which is, sell at a loss, clawback via game sales. And that model is in jeopardy at the moment. He also pointed out, of course, that the cost of making a console isn't coming down, which is like a profit center for the platform holder further along into the generation. And that isn't happening anymore. So the 3DO model is kind of coming back into vogue, if you like, simply by, the surrounding conditions. And I suspect what Phil may be hoping for is that competition from people building effectively the same device drives the price down instead. And then basically you have a platform that you can install any store on. And then it's basically a different proposition, a different type of competition. It's all about who's got the best, game store. On Xbox, it may well be the platform-specific features, because you're not going to be getting stuff like Xbox achievements if you're playing the Steam version of the game on your Xbox. So it's a different type of competition at that point. I think the thing that's really curious about this whole Xbox discussion is the fact that we're having it now. What is effectively the midpoint of the Xbox Series generation. Phil is starting the conversation early almost. So the 3DO model, it may well come to pass, but obviously we'd be looking to see greater competition to actually make the devices affordable. Yeah, interesting stuff. I think the bottom line is, though, that there are some high level discussions going on at Microsoft and possibly elsewhere, which is what does the games market look like in 10 years' time, and how do we get there first and command market leadership. Interesting times.